Okay, so as you see, I've maxed out each of my class, and I've decided that I'm going to main Gunner for now. I may switch to another class at a later time, but I'm having fun with Gunner, so that's what I'm going to work on for now. For my subclass, I'm running Fighter for a pretty obvious reason, actually. If you go to class skills for Fighter, I have two separate fighters, one for if I'm maining it and one for subclass. And it's just because you can stack all your points into defeat advantage, defeat PP recovery, increases damage against downed enemies, increases PP recovery when attacking downed enemies. So that is two very good buffs to subclass with just about anything. Now let's take a look at the gunner skills. Chain trigger is very important for gunners, and the way that works is you start it by doing a charged attack, and then you build up hits, and then you complete it by doing another charged attack. You can build up a maximum of 100 hits. The higher you build the hits, the better the effects will be. And the effects are, it will speed up your attack speed. So if you get to the max, as it shows there, attack speed max increase is 120% increase of your attack speed. Chain trigger quick reload, what that means is the higher you stack those hits, the sooner you will be able to start another chain trigger. So if you did a charged attack and then immediately followed with a charged attack, it would be quite a while before you could start it up again. If you get all the way to 100, I think the cooldown is very quick. It's like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Stylish roll, that's your basic dodge. It's a weapon action where you can avoid getting hit. Stylish onslaught is where during your weapon, I'm sorry. Stylish onslaught is when you don't roll, you actually kind of throw this barrier up and do an attack. It's a little weird. I'll get into that one later. Stylish roll strike back is also effective. It allows you to do an in-between attack. So you dodge, you do this stylish strike back, and then when you land, you can launch one of your regular attacks. And I'll go over that real quick. Oh, if you want to see what I'm running with, there's my battle power. If you want to look at some of my stats, there's my stats. They're certainly not perfect, and I don't put much importance on battle power. You could have a really high battle power, but a really horrible stat distribution. So it's a really, really rough idea of how good your character is. So anyways, the dodge that I was talking about with your weapon action is this. You can dodge backwards, you can dodge sideways, you can dodge forward, like that. The dodge strike back is when you dodge and you do that attack. You can also do it with regular, but you can do it with photon art like this. And what that does is it allows you to slip attack between doing your dodge and doing one of your regular photon arts. So if I were to press Y on my controller, that's the photon art. That's what it looks like. But if I dodge and press Y, it does that. So I can dodge, press Y, and then go into that. So it allows me to slip an extra attack in between dodging and going to one of my regular attacks. And that's actually important because Gunner doesn't do amazing high damage attacks, but what Gunner can do is be very consistent with pretty much always attacking the enemy. That should be your goal from what I can tell when playing Gunner, is you want to constantly be putting damage in. Even when you're dodging attacks, you're still attacking. You're always putting in damage. You're never stop shooting. That's where Gunner's strength really lies, in that it may not be the highest DPS class out there, but it's very consistent, and it can constantly be putting in the damage numbers. Not only that, because you can put in all your damage from distance, you get, I guess, a little extra time to time your dodges to avoid getting hit. Now, when you do the dodge standing still, it looks like this. I gotta tell you, it took me a while to figure out why I would ever want to do this. Why not just dodge and move and be able to slip an extra attack in? Why would I want to do that? Well, as it turns out, if you do this a bunch of times, you're invulnerable almost constantly while you're doing that. There's a couple of brief windows, a brief couple frames where you can get hit, but I'm telling you, if you do this inside of a large enemy AoE, you can quite likely come out without being hit at all. And I'll show you an example of that right now. All right, welcome back from that. So let me go over how to stack the chains and how I do it. I have a weapon that I'm using right here, Resurger machine gun. I've turned it into a multi-weapon with a talus, and I'll show you why. Allows me to start my chain, throw up my talus, which also helps build my chain and helps me build PP. Now, I'm going to close that chain out, and you'll see I have, where that chain was building, you'll see I have a little boost bar. And that boost is the boost on my attack speed. So now all my attacks are a little bit faster, as you can see there. Now, you don't immediately have to start another chain up. I've noticed some people say that you should do that. You really don't need to. But you do want to get a nether chain completed before that boost bar runs out. So just kind of keep an eye on it. My rule of thumb is when it's about halfway down, I'll start another chain back up. And you see my boost is maxed out again. Now, in those cases, I wasn't trying to get to 100, but normally that is what you would be going for, would be to get to 100, because then you get your maximum boost. So that's how the chain works. Now, the chain works with every photon art that the gunner has. The gunner has this one that I've already demonstrated. That's kind of your long distance attack. Gunner has this one. That's your AoE. And this one, which is your close range attack. And each one of those can be charged up. Each one of those can begin and complete a chain. And I'll go over each one of those attacks real quick. So, this one, which is, let me see what that's called. The Bullet Rave is kind of your long range attack. You can cancel halfway into it, or you can let it complete. So it completes, it does one big shot at the end, right there. You can cancel it just by moving after the third part, and then you don't do the last big shot. Normally you want to let that last big shot get in because it does pretty good damage. But you know, if you're going to get hit or something, you can always cancel out of that. The second one, the AoE, let's see what that's called. It's called the Aimless Rain. It's actually a really good AoE. The way it works is when you first pop it, you kind of build this forward momentum, and then you can move around while it's casting. And much like the first photon art that we went over, there's like 3 hits and then a final hit. So it does all that and then a final hit. And just like the first one, you can cancel out of that last hit. You don't have to do it. That AoE is extremely effective when you're doing PE bursts, when you're farming the level 15 zones or combat zones, especially on the PE burst. Because the way that AoE works is, imagine your character is the center of a sphere, and everything within the radius of that sphere gets hit multiple times. So the more densely packed mobs are, the more hits it will do. As you can see there, it did a total of 22 hits. It killed pretty much everything inside that sphere. With a PE burst, you can actually go from 0 hits in your chain to 100 just by using 2 or maybe 3 of your AoEs. And I'll show you an example of that right now. Let's try to build this up quick. Okay, welcome back. And now I will go over the last photon art, which is the aimless, nope, the point blank. Point blank. So that's this one. It's 2 hits. It's cancelable after the first hit. You can charge it just like all the other Ranger things, so it can begin and close chains. This one is very short range. You have to be up close for it to land. It does dash you forward when you use it. So if you're holding forward, it'll push you towards the enemy. This is the attack you usually want to go to when a opponent is downed. So when they're downed, when that status effect goes in, or they're frozen or whatever, you run up and you just start spamming this, because it doesn't do more damage than your other attacks, but you can spam it faster than your other attacks. So over time, it does more damage. It has higher DPS. And I'll show, this is what it looks like spamming it. Now, obviously, if you have your chain maxed out, it's even faster. And that's usually what you're going to want to use when an opponent is down. Now, about me using the Talus turret, that is really effective even when you're not building your chain, because it does help you build PP, which allows you to put in more shots. All right. Seems like I'm missing something. There's something else I wanted to cover. Oh yeah, before I forget, as you see from this distance, the circle in the target that I'm locked onto is white, but if I move up closer, it turns orange. That just means I have overall better damage when it's orange. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, because a lot of times you don't want to be right up next to the enemy, unless you know the fight really well and you've got that boss's patterns down perfect, then by all means get up close. But like if you're fighting something like a Gigantics or whatever that can do a lot of damage to you, you might want to sit outside where you have the distance to be able to dodge stuff. But when they go down, you run up, you do that, and it's going to do more damage because that circle is going to turn orange. Anyways, that's kind of where I'm at right now with Gunner. I still have a lot of practice to do with it. I still get hit more than I should, because I think your real goal as Gunner is you should be getting hit very, very rarely, because you are fighting at a greater distance than like fighters are or hunters are. You have more time to respond to whatever the enemy is doing, and once you learn your fights, whether it's in an urgent quest or a Gigantics or whatever it is, once you learn your fights, you should be able to effectively dodge and avoid just about everything. So your job as Gunner, though you don't do the highest DPS, you can do very consistent DPS. You're constantly putting in shots. You're always attacking with something. You never really stop. And you're avoiding damage. And I usually, on my sub palette there, I will usually have my action just sitting on the revive button, because I don't get hit too often, and I find that what I want to be able to do is get those fighters and those hunters back up when they die. And they do tend to die more just because they have to be closer to the action, and there's a lot of attacks that different bosses do that are more within the immediate vicinity. And again, your panic button, if you think you're going to get hit by something big and you're not sure what to do, is just spam that weapon action. You'll high chance you'll avoid getting hit by anything. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Gunner so far. Like I said, I am not by any stretch of the imagination the greatest gunner on earth. I have a lot of practice to do. I'm still trying to get down my skill rotations and knowing when to use what skill against which bosses, and learning each in different fights. I do find that going to this particular fight where you can fight the Bujin is really good practice. You can just go in there and kind of practice your combinations. So that's my thoughts so far. If anybody saw anything I said in here that was really way off and dumb, feel free to let me know and tell me how I can do better. Later.